Hello and welcome back to the You Show Show. It is the show where you show things. I am Calvin Lays McMurray, and I am joined again today by my good friend Michael Graf. Mike, hello and welcome back.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. And Mike, we talked about owner, writer, director of spotfilmworks.com, MikeWrites.com.
No, Graf writes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Graf.
I'm sorry. My B. And thank God, thank God you're here. And I was thinking too. Another fun fact about you and me is that we are both ordained ministers. We can marry you.
We can
So
get you itch.
we should. Oh, we should. That should be the next website. Lasergraphmarriages.com. Hire us to do your
Need to
weddings.
get hitched in a hurry.
Yeah,
Call the
exactly.
laser.
Yeah,
Call the Graf laser.
yeah, pregnant and afraid from your dad. Call Mr.
Yeah.
Laser. Yeah, there we go. I can marry you on
Shotgun
this.
wedding in your future.
We could do that. We also we drink at downtown Madison, and then we just like go around and like point our fingers like guns at couples. It's like, pew, you're married. Pew, you're married. Knock knock. Guess what? Pew, you're married. Yeah, that's definitely part of the job. Anyway, I also really quickly want to talk about, like, I was thinking about last episode how we've known each other for 8 years, and I do want to talk about that you have been such a good friend that you're still friends with me even though I've almost blown up your house twice.
Dude.
um
And killed a horse.
and yep, that is all correct and not embarrassing at all. I have spilt fireworks inside of bags of fireworks not once but twice at Michael's house on 4th of July parties. And you can always
How you survived a year in the Middle East is beyond. You
yeah.
should be dead. You should be dead right now.
Yeah, there's a couple examples in my life where I can say that I should be dead by now, and that's one of them. And one of them was with Joel, and he was in the military, and I had just gotten back from. If anyone doesn't know that's listening, I lived in Saudi Arabia for a year, and I had just gotten back, and him and I were talking about the Middle East and having a conversation about that, and we were lighting up fireworks, and we were having a great time, and I fucking knocked over.
It was 4th of July in my front yard, and we had actually, knowing who was going to be there, knowing Calvin and knowing Joel, we put the bag of fireworks across the fence,
Yep.
as far away from the fire and the booze as possible. Oh no, did that make a difference?
And
No.
then, nope, that stopped us exactly 0%. And I shot a bottle rocket into the box of fireworks that was supposed to be like hours of entertainment, was gone in like 10 seconds.
Oh, suddenly we had the final scene to Apocalypse Now.
I remember I accidentally knocked it over, and I just hear Joel go, "Oh, fuck." And we both started running. The box blows up, and I swear to God, I am not making this up. I got shot in the back of the head, and my back got hit. I got pulverized by fireworks. I had to change my shirt because I had clothes. I was spending the night at your house, so I had clothes at your house.
The image, the image was hilarious. It was like shadows, and it was like strobe lights from all the fireworks going off, and just seeing Calvin run as fast as he can in strobe, just screaming, running through the horse paddock, run for your life.
And then I remember I went back up to Joel, and I was like, "Dude, are you okay? I'm so sorry. Like, if you want to sue me, I understand." And he looked at me, and he was like, "Dude, that was so cool." I was like, "Thank you. I concur. I do also believe that was pretty cool." Yeah, we've had some adventures. Today's episode is about it was the movie that I had selected for Mike. It's Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory, 1957. Like we were saying, 1 year before the other film, which was Touch of Evil by Orson Welles. And I guess starting off, what are your very first impressions of Paths of Glory by Stanley Kubrick?
Well, it's interesting. Um, when you had asked about that title, and I had not seen it, and I don't know why I hadn't seen it. I thought I had seen all of Kubrick's films, and for whatever reason, this one slipped through the cracks. And he did it right after. I mean, it's one of his earlier works,
Mm-hmm.
and I think this is the film that puts Kubrick in the upper echelon of directors. There's people talk about like that Kubrick look or that Kubrick, that
Uh-huh.
sense of styling of Kubrick. And in his first movie, The Killing, which is kind of a low budget film noir heist movie about some robbers, low life robbers that try to rob a racetrack. It's you don't really see that. It's more kind of traditional. He's telling the story, but I don't think he's really kind of come into his own
No,
yet.
no.
And- which is interesting because a lot of the same players involved in The Killing are involved in this movie.
Okay.
His same producer, his same cinematographer. I think it was George Krause was the cinematographer. Even some of the actors, the actor, the really tall, awkward. I forget the character's name in this. That is one of the accused.
Okay.
Played one of the cheap hoods that was in The Killing.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Uh,
know that. You did your homework way better than me.
Yeah, yeah, but in the movie it's really fascinating, and I think I mentioned it in the last episode that this movie it was made about the same time, within a year of Orson Welles' Touch of Evil, and it is a precursor to the way indie films are made today. In that Kubrick and his producer packaged the film. They bought the rights to a book. They had a script commissioned. They got Kirk Douglas on board to star in it. They had the whole package put together before they went to, I think it was MGM, to get a financing and distribution deal for the picture, and it doesn't feel like an indie film at
No,
all.
no, not at
It
all. No.
feels like a studio film,
It feels very
and
tight.
it's very tight, and it has visually it has the hallmarks of a Stanley Kubrick film in the symmetry of the photography, the kind of the perfection of the sharp and the deep focus of every shot. There's shots that are not only composed for the beauty of the shot, but the visual style has this kind of very hard look and feel to it. And if you kind of were glancing at watching it with the sound off, it looks like a Kubrick film.
Yes.
The thing that was, I'm like, who gives a shit? It's like it looks like a Kubrick film. But the thing that, like, when I watched it, I was absolutely blown away by this, and I'm really curious to find out from you why, out of all Kubrick's films, you like this one the most. But what fascinated me, it's known as an anti-war film.
Yes.
But to me, the message that jumped out so like glaringly loud and clear was that not only is it an anti-war film, it's a total and complete condemnation of the wealthy class, of
Mm-hmm.
the wealthy and the privileged,
Yep.
and it shines a mirror on the hypocrisy of the privileged, of the 1%, that is just stunning, that you would not find today.
No.
And it's a really remarkable movie. In it really is an indictment against the wealthy, and how people like the common man is literally cannon fodder for the egos of these just entrenched, wealthy sons of bitches.
Yep. Evil, terrible people. And I think I don't know this to be fact, but I'm pretty certain. I'm very certain, pretty certain that so the film takes place inside the French military, and I'm pretty certain that is how he got away with it, of making this movie. Because like we were talking about in the last episode, censorship in movies and storytelling was very much alive in the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. And I have always firmly believed and felt that if this was about the American army, this film would have never gotten made.
Oh, dude, this movie was banned in France. You could not play this film in the French didn't know about this movie. Nobody had seen it. The ban wasn't lifted until 1974.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like the French New Wave, the filmmakers of the French New Wave in the '60s, Truffaut famously said that it's impossible to make an anti-war film because you can't celebrate something that you are taking the time to put down on film. You can't shoot a battle scene and say that it's an anti-war film.
Yep.
And yet he's saying that out of ignorance because he was not allowed by his government to see Paths of Glory. So it's the movie is loosely based on it's based on a book, but it's also loosely based on actual events that happened in the French army during World War One. And the story is about it's about a battle gone, about a general that condemns 4 innocent soldiers to death.
Yep.
For no other reason that they survived the battle. They didn't die. And it was a testament that there was a trial in which they were not allowed to speak. They were not allowed to present their case. And there's a quote in the movie. I think it's chilling. It's one of my favorite lines from the movie. The general, he very condescendingly says, tells a subordinate, one way to maintain discipline is to shoot a man now and then.
Yep.
And it's like, what the fuck? I mean, it's really, and he says, I think the lead up to that sentence, he talks about the perfect tonic for morale, for low morale. It's not the fact that, in the past 2 years, there's, hundreds of thousands of soldiers on both sides have died. And it's a standoff, and like no one has taken any land whatsoever, and it's just it was World War One was the advent of mass killings. It was the machine gun was invented, the tank was invented, the airplane was invented. Europeans entered World War One with this old world view of warfare, and yet they were applying modern technology that could kill hundreds of people where before you could kill one person at a time.
Yep.
And it was just a bloodbath.
It changed the face of war, definitely.
Yeah.
And we should briefly mention, so this film takes place in World War One. Again, the French army is the main focus of the story. I believe. I mean, it casts Kirk Douglas, and this is kind of also reminiscent of the last episode talking about Touch of Evil. Charlton Heston plays a Mexican in that movie, and now we've got Kirk Douglas playing a Frenchman.
French officer.
And it's just kind of like, it's part of the times, in my opinion, if you want to cast a Frenchman, hire a Frenchman, but that's okay.
It was interesting because Kubrick hires, basically, Kirk Douglas plays the Colonel Dax, and then the lowly officers that are wrongly accused of desertion are American actors. The only French actors were the officers.
Yep.
Which probably pissed the French off.
I would have, yes, but Kubrick was very much a person where it's in filmmaking, there is the absolute 100% accuracy, and then there is the interpretation of any given thing in filmmaking. And I've always felt that Kubrick was like, if you're just best for the role, just do it. It doesn't matter who you are or what you look like. If you're for the role, just go ahead and do it. And I feel like that's what he did with Kirk Douglas and this.
Well, and I think it's one of Kirk Douglas's best performances.
I agree.
It's he has to play this morally outraged officer that has to also follow orders
and keep his cool.
And yet everything he's so morally outraged the entire film. And it's so this general orders this doomed attack on this German outpost, and the casualty rate he's told will be in the neighborhood of 55%.
Yep.
That means out of half the soldiers that are going to charge this hill, half of them are going to die. And the general is okay with that. He thinks that's acceptable, and he's told up front that this is doomed to failure, and he's okay with it. He thinks that it'll be good for morale, and what he's really saying is it'll be good for his own personal career, something that he can brag about to other socialites back in Paris at the dances and things that were still going on, and it really it's shocking. I mean, to see the battle scene, and when they commit to the battle, and all along the way, the soldiers know it's a suicide mission. The officers beneath the general, Colonel Dax, the Kirk Douglas, knows it's a suicide mission. Everyone knows that their life is going to end for the vanity of this fucking asshole
One
general.
singular person. Yep.
Yeah, and I forgot what I was going to say. The thing that's so compelling is that they know they're going to die, and the scenes are just emotionally draining. They're so emotionally draining to watch, and the battle, of course, goes for shit. Oh, and then the general, when he sees the battle going south, he orders the artillery to fire on his own men. And even the artillery officers, they're like, we can't follow this order. We cannot follow this order. And it's what's stunning is again the sheer ego of the commander.
Mm-hmm.
And again, considering the last 4 years of the shit show we've had to live through, of a vain and egotistical commander in chief.
Yep.
It kind of sheds kind of new light on that.
0+1, and they're still in the trenches. They're not advancing. Those miserable cowards. They're not advancing. The barrage is getting away from them. They're still in the trenches.
Yes, sir.
Captain Nichols.
Yes, sir.
Order the 75s to commence firing on our own positions. Captain, do you fail to comprehend the meaning of my order?
No, sir, but I respectfully ask the
Captain, do you fail to comprehend the meaning of my order?
No, sir.
Then carry it out, Captain.
Yes, sir.
And all along the way, the whole movie is just draining to watch.
Yeah.
So you get these 4 soldiers somehow survive the attack. Then they're arrested and court-martialed for supposedly, trying to flee trying to flee when they didn't. They were randomly picked. Kirk Douglas character, he's a lawyer. Before the war, he was a lawyer, and he's so morally outraged, he volunteers to defend these guys, and the whole court, the military court system, it's set up for failure. It's set up for these guys. It's like the general says. It's like, killing these guys is going to be good for morale. I mean, the deck was laid. There was no justice whatsoever. They knew that they were going to be found guilty, and I think it's really interesting, Kubrick's choice to shoot the court case in this palatial French palace.
Yes. Yeah.
Where it's like these guys that have, literally caked in mud, that haven't had a bath, and they've been living in trenches for the last 2 years. All of a sudden they're being judged in this literal palace.
Yep.
And it's such a tragedy.
Yeah.
And Kirk Douglas, every objection, every point of law that he brings up is ignored. It's shot down, and you're like, "Fuck, man, this can't get any worse." And then
it does.
And then it does. And then so they're found guilty. These 4 guys are found guilty, 4 common soldiers, and they're led. The scene where they're led to the firing squad.
Yep.
It's just, it's heart-wrenching, and Kubrick does something. I think this is like one of those scenes that helped establish Kubrick, that kind of Kubrick look. the camera just relentlessly follows or frames them with the palace behind them as they're led to the firing squad, and it doesn't relent.
Nope.
The scene goes on probably 2 or 3 minutes longer than you want. You like it, like the editor and you is probably like, okay, cut.
Yeah.
Okay, cut. We get the point. Okay, cut.
Yep.
And he doesn't cut.
Yep.
And it makes you think. It makes you puts you in the place like, oh shit, these guys are gonna lose their life in the next couple of minutes. And even the officer, there was one of the condemned. It was chosen because he had tried to do the right thing and point out a corrupt commanding officer, and that commanding officer is in charge of the firing squad. And the guy, he has so much guilt, he begs the soldier for forgiveness before he shoots him. I mean, it's just this heart-wrenching scene, and and that's not the end of the movie.
Nope.
And it's just like every place where you think the story is going to end, it doesn't end, and it just goes on. And the Kirk Douglas character, he tries to do the right thing, and he's just rebuffed at every level, and he commits the ultimate sin, and he goes against the upper class, and he calls out the general at this extravagant ball, this dinner and dance where everyone is partying and drinking, and this lavish dance, and he calls out the general to the commanding officer, and calls out the general for what he is, this cowardly, corrupt official that is not help the French cause. And he does it in a really unique way. But it's just, oh my God, it's a brilliant story, brilliant film. And the thing that I was utterly astounded by is that when the movie, these four prisoners, it doesn't have a happy ending.
No.
Giving away the ending here, the four prisoners are shot, unceremoniously shot. And you think, okay, the movie's going to end, and it doesn't. The last scene of that movie, I think, is my favorite scene in the movie, and comes out of the blue. It has nothing to do with the story whatsoever.
Nope.
And the last scene of the movie is all these weary soldiers, the common privates, the foot soldiers that were in the trenches, and they have a night off. They're on leave, and they're in a bar, and the French barkeeper trots out a captured German woman, young woman, beautiful young German, 20-year-old German woman who's been captured by the French, and he trots her out on stage, and he mocks her. He mocks her for being German, and he mocks her, and she's attractive, and he points that out. And you look at all these soldiers that have been stuck in trenches, haven't seen a woman in years, and the guy forces her to sing a song, and the song she sings through tears is the most beautiful, touching song and there's no accompaniment, there's no instruments. Nope. It's just one human voice, pure singing. And she makes this emotional connection with all of the other soldiers. She's crying, singing in German. The French soldiers, they don't understand the lyrics, but they understand the melody.
Yep.
And some of them start humming, and these hardened soldiers start crying.
Die Liebe nahm kein Ende mehr. Und als man ihm die Botschaft bracht, dass sein Herzliebchen im Sterben lag, da ließ er all sein Hab und Gut und eilte seinem Herzliebchen zu. Da ließ er all sein Hab und Gut und eilte seinem Herzliebchen zu. Ach bitte, Mutter, bring ein Licht, ein Liebchen stirbt, ich seh es nicht. Das war ein ganzes Jahr. Das war für ein treuer Husar, der liebt sein Mädchen ein ganzes Jahr.
And that I get goosebumps even just describing it. That humanity, that shared humanity among, and I'm air quoting, enemies, is I think the linchpin to the story that Kubrick is trying to tell.
Yes.
And that showing that they're, you know, that the whole idea of warfare is such a corrupt act that it's an idea to keep the masses down, to keep poor people poor, and keep to keep the wealthy wealthy. And it's stunning. And the scene at the end, if you aren't affected by the emotion of the beauty of this young girl singing, I don't know what would. I don't know what would. You have no heart.
Yeah. Fun fact about that scene. I agree 1,000,000% with everything that you said. Yeah. But that actor, the actress, the lady that is singing, that is Stanley Kubrick's wife. That's how they met.
That's how they met. They weren't married at the time.
Nope.
They married after this movie. Christina, I think her name is Christina.
I think it's Chris. I can't pronounce it.
Christiana.
It's
Christiana.
It's Christiana. Yeah.
Yeah, Christiana, and her maiden name was Harlan, and she was a German actress at the time, and Kubrick fell in love with. He fell in love with her, and there was a story she tells. Maybe you know it about. She didn't think she was right for the role, and he fell. I think he fell in love with her voice, and fell in love with her. But he didn't tell her that at first. But they after the movie they finished filming, they got married within a couple of years after that.
Yep.
And they were together the rest of their lives.
Yeah, the rest of their lives. Yeah. Yeah. And she loved him. And there is an amazing interview with her and Martin Scorsese. It was after the death of Stanley Kubrick. It was probably shot sometime in the early 2000s, and they all sit down and they talk about Stanley Kubrick's life, and she gives input on, Paths of Glory along with his other films. And then Martin Scorsese too is talking, he's one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, sitting here basically saying your husband was one of the best filmmakers ever. And like how you could get through that as a human being without like kind of breaking down in tears is crazy. But even after his death, you just get that feeling like, man, they were in love. Like he loved her. And I know this is like another crazy random side fact, but like he loved his family as well. She talks about in that interview, he filmed their family all the time, nonstop. A, he loved it. B, it was an excuse to try new lenses and new cameras. But, in the moment she talks about as well, that in the moment it was always kind of annoying. Like, oh God, Dad's got the camera again. Come on, sweetheart, just put the camera down, come to dinner. And he kind of forced them, Stanley Kubrick forced people to do something. And he filmed it. And then in that interview, she talks about now they get to go back and they get to see that footage and they get to watch it. And I couldn't even imagine that feeling. Of being able to see, your husband and your children when they were younger together as a happy family. And apparently he has like hours of this, and which is pretty cool if you ask me. But yeah, the scene at the end too is the film is it's about understanding. It's about a lot of things, but one of the things it's about understanding, like you were saying, she is a German. That is who they are fighting. They don't really ever talk about it. And here you are seeing this woman who is scared and terrified, in front of what is to her the enemy, the French, but not her enemy. She's not a soldier, but you get what I'm saying. And she's crying.
And she's a prisoner of war. She was captured by the French soldiers.
Yep. And she's singing, and she forces all these people to break down in tears. And I think it's just that moment where it's like, oh shit, yeah, these people are people, it's easy to make a war movie where you just kill the bad guys left and right. But this is a movie, and it's also one of the first movies to say, yeah, when you kill people in war, like their husbands, their brothers, their sons, and obviously later on with women introduced into the military as well, their daughters, their wives, and so on, and that I think is essential to this film, and it's one of the first movies I think to kind of make that statement where it's war is ugly. You were talking about they showed the landscape, they show the battlefield. So the French are in a bunker, and there's trench, trenches, and there is, like World War I fashion, there is a trench, X distance away. It's within eyesight. And they have to storm it and they have to take it. And the thing that I love about anti-war movies, they do this in like Vietnam movies as well, where the landscape, the thing that they are trying to take over is just absolutely like hideous, and looking at it serves no value. Like obviously there's a tactical reason for taking this point over, but when you show it in a movie, it's a valley of death. It's a valley of barbed wire, destroyed vehicles, dead bodies, blood, bones, and dirt. And it's the most like unenthusiastic thing to look at. It's, you know what I mean? It's just like, that's the most important thing to these generals. And when you kind of think of it in terms like that, it's like, yeah, all these people are dying for a fucking lump of mud and dead bodies. And that's nuts. And I think that this film does a great job at introducing that idea and bringing back.
It asks the question, like, what are we fighting? What are we fighting for? Why are we fighting the Germans? Why is Germany fighting us? I mean, why are we killing each other? And I mean, it was a standstill for 4 years. Nobody took any land. I mean, it was, both sides were literally entrenched. It's like, what's the point of this? Especially when you've got more in common than you don't. And that, I think that last scene with her singing, I think Kubrick was saying, listen, like what he does visually, when he breaks a scene down to like the most basic elements visually, I think in the story he was breaking down this, like, what's important in life. Like it's these relationships. It's not killing. It's not this loss of life and this senseless loss of life.
It's this art. It's this love. It's this humanity. I mean, there's no other way to say it. It's just it's this humanity. Yeah.
Yeah, and the art of her singing, I mean, the beauty and art of the song that she's singing is in contrast to the palaces of the wealthy French elite that are covered from floor to ceiling in artwork and gilded golden frames and statues and sculptures and all this stuff. And there's such a contrast between the two, and yet at the end of the day, the thing that is like the most moving beauty in the film is her voice.
And it's also it's in a dive bar. It's in a seedy low it's, and I think like the film is kind of also saying that humanity, that life, that love isn't going to happen in a place like that palace. It's going to happen again amongst people that are generally more just like you and me, the average Joe of the world. That's not some major politician, hyper general that's making a career out of the death of people. The life is in these smaller moments, and it's beautiful.
And also the thing I think that's really interesting about that scene, it comes at the very end of the movie where every major beat of the film, every major scene up until that point shows, like, you keep waiting for something good to happen and it doesn't.
Yep.
Like shitty things, it just gets worse and worse, where innocent people are losing their lives, and innocent people, it's like shit. So when you get to this last scene, when the scene starts and you see this vulnerable innocent, vulnerable young woman in this bar with 50 drunk, dirty,
Yeah.
angry soldiers, enemy combatants. You're like, oh no.
Uh-huh.
You think it's like and there's even shots where it's like, like that soldier's got lust in his eyes. Like that soldier,
Uh-huh.
given the chance, take her out back and rape her. And you can't, don't tell me that no one doesn't think of that when they see that the beginning of that scene.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah, it's just like, oh God, what's going to happen to her? Yeah.
But then he turns the table.
Yep. And it's
Turns the table.
It's funny because it's a really good contrast with what you were talking about earlier, where again they have the soldiers, they're walking down to the firing squad, and it, like you were saying, it keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. And the first time I watched that movie, I kind of kept thinking in my head, like, what's going to happen. They're going to die. But there's just this little part of you that wanted Kirk Douglas at the last minute to grab the revolver of one of the people on the firing squad and shoot him and then save the 3 captive prisoners, and he saves the day because he's Kirk Douglas, and that's what Kirk Douglas does. He saves the day. And then they get shot and they die. And
if it was an American studio film, it would have happened.
Yep.
The studio would have made him change that.
Nobody saves the day, and you watch 3 soldiers die for literally no reason at all. And so when you're seeing that scene again with her singing, yeah, it's like your mind instantly is like, oh, well, it's a movie, so this is going to happen. And then instead you end up crying to a song that you don't even understand because it's a foreign language. I mean, obviously, unless you speak German. But yeah, I think that's very much the point, where there's a lot of things that he says, and one of my favorite things about Kubrick, I love Kubrick, and one of my favorite things that he does, and you were talking about this, that this is a staple of Kubrick. This is the movie that got that Kubrick look going, that Kubrick feel, that Kubrick incentive. This is where the car starts, is with this movie. And he introduces so many ideas and so many themes, but he never tells you his opinion. He gives it to you, and he lets you walk away and think about it and chew on it and figure out what it means, because I've always felt that he thinks that whatever you think about the movie is more interesting than what he has to think about the movie. And this film does that, in my opinion, in spades, because...
Oh, I couldn't disagree with you more.
Really?
I respectfully and humbly disagree with you. I think his anti-war and the message of the corrupt social classes, the upper classes, is so strong, and he's such a strong filmmaker that he is able to make his argument and his point of view known in such a subtle way that you don't realize that what his point of view is until the end.
No, yeah,
I think like you're coming to your own conclusion about the film is a testament to how good a filmmaker he actually is.
Yes.
And I think that's the mark of an artist, of a true artist, is that, he leads you down the path to make that decision without having to like drag you by the nose to do it.
Yeah. And I think that's more so what I'm trying to say, is that, like, yeah, he's not slapping stickers all over it to say this, because it's never, like, the word anti-war is not mentioned once, but he's doing things to show it to you without saying it. And this is, right. Yeah, that's very prominent in the movie.
I'm awfully glad you could be there, George. This sort of thing is always rather grim. But this one had a kind of splendor to it, don't you think?
I have never seen an affair of this sort handled any better.
The men died wonderfully. There's always that chance that one of them will do something that will leave everyone with a bad taste. This time you couldn't ask for better. Yes?
Yes, Colonel?
You wanted to see me, sir.
Oh, yes. Come in, Colonel. Come in and sit down.
Oh, Colonel Dax, your men died very well.
Would you like some coffee, Colonel?
Oh, thank you, sir.
Oh, by the way, Paul, It's been brought to my attention that you ordered your artillery to fire on your own men during the attack on the anthill.
I did what? Who told you that?
Colonel Dax came to me last night with the story.
Colonel Dax, I've always known that you were a disloyal officer, but I never dreamed that you would stoop to anything so low as this.
They declared the attack on the next trench, and some of the soldiers get up and, charge, and some of them don't. And that's the question of, again, like, what would you do in that position? Because, you want to get back to your family, you want to get back to your, your wife and your kids. But if you go over this line, you're going to die. And so it's like, are you branded a traitor at that point, or are you branded a human being? And it's like there's a lot of themes like that are, again, very subtle, but they add to the story overall. And there's even there's a character, the evil bastard General Rowe. He's walking through the trenches and he sees a soldier who's like, he's zapped, he's gone. The lights are on, but no one's home.
He's got, in World War I, it was called shell shock, but it's post-traumatic. He's got post-traumatic stress.
PTSD. It wasn't known, obviously at the time of the filming of this movie, and B, in the time it takes place. And the General too is even saying to him, like, it's just get him back on the field. Like, he'll snap out of it. And again, there's a theme there of not coming willfully or unwillfully, not coming to the realization of truly what is happened to this man because of the things that he has seen. And there's things kind of hidden underneath the surface that I think Kubrick has done a great job in this movie of bringing to the forefront that a lot of filmmakers, especially in that time and era, were not doing. And for that, I think it's a genius film. I don't know if because you'd said this one was my favorite, but I think I more picked it for you because it was pretty. I think it makes a good contrast and relevancy to Touch of Evil. It was more the reason why I picked it. So I don't know if this is my favorite, but I saw it in college, and I fell in love with it. It was like an introduction to what was it called? Like Introduction to the 20th Century. And the world history that led into the 20th century. And the last day of class, he played this film for the class. And I really, 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 really liked it. And you were also talking about how you... Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was saying, if you think about it, it's, through his illustrious career, I mean, think of his other brilliant films. Look at Dr. Strangelove and Full Metal Jacket. I think this idea of showing the insanity of warfare is a common theme that runs through a lot of his movies.
Oh yeah.
And like I had said, I had not seen Paths of Glory, but when Full Metal Jacket came out the year I graduated from college.
Okay.
And I remember seeing that, and when the movie ended, I could not get out of my chair.
Uh-huh.
I saw it with two of my roommates, and we sat there, and the lights came up, the curtain closed, and we couldn't move. And it was really, and there's a scene in there. If you remember in Full Metal Jacket, towards the end, when the Matthew Modine character, they're under attack. There's a sniper, and who's taken out a bunch of people, and he wounds the sniper. It's a Vietnamese woman, and she's still alive, and she's begging him to kill her, to put her out of her misery because she's in so much pain. And this scene, I just think is one of the most brilliant scenes in all of film cinematic history. They're at war, and she's been killing his fellow soldiers. They've been shooting at her, killing her fellow soldiers. And yet when it's one-on-one, when it's in this injured woman and Matthew Modine, and she's begging him to put her out, to do the humane thing and to put her out of her misery, like you'd shoot a dog or a horse that's injured. He is confronted with the moral choice of whether to put her out of her misery or to let her suffer. And the shot is so subtle that he's on his helmet, scratched in magic marker. It says, "Meat is murder." And the scene starts off when he's deciding what to do. It starts off framed where all you see is murder, but as he's coming to decide like where his own personal morality lies, the camera subtly tilts up. So on the helmet you see not just the word murder, but meat is murder, and or a born to kill. That's what it is. I take it back. It was the phrase "born to kill." So you just see the word "kill," and then at the end, the camera gradually tilts up, so you see the whole phrase "born to kill." And I thought, that to me is it's simple but sheer visual genius.
And it's bringing again the human that scene. Yes, and I think there's a lot of parallels between Paths of Glory and Full Metal Jacket. You could probably make a whole episode just talking about that. And that's the scene where it's again where the humanity comes in. All you see is the sniper up in a tower pecking off the American soldiers one by one. But then when we get in this building, it's this young woman, and it's just like, oh fuck. And it's a lot of the messages of again the term anti-war movies, a lot of it boils down to again the duty of your country versus the duty of yourself and in your own morality, and again like which one's correct. And it's a very 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 difficult gray area of morality. One of my favorite parts, and I'm paraphrasing here, is Private Joker, someone's talking to him. I think it's like a news report. It's been a minute since I've seen the film, and yeah, it's on his helmet. It says "Born to Kill," but then right next to it is a peace sign. Yeah. And somebody asks him about that. Sir, you've got a peace sign on your helmet. He goes, "Yes, sir, I do." And he goes, "You also have a sign that says "Born to Kill." And he goes, "Yes, sir, I do." And he goes, "What does that mean? What's the meaning of this?" And he goes, "I don't know, sir." And it's like that's it right there. I don't know what this means. And yeah, that's another great film too. If anyone has not seen Full Metal Jacket, I would highly recommend that film. That one is a little bit more intense than Paths of Glory. Paths of Glory is a little bit easier to swallow. It's still it's heavy hitting, but Full Metal Jacket ramps up the intensity, I would say. But
it goes to 11.
Yeah. This movie has some scenes of violence and war, but it's not over the top by any means. But Full Metal Jacket, they ramp it up. And again, it did that also. Then again, the duty of your country versus duty of yourself is very reflective also in Paths of Glory, because it's that like there was a study done, I think in the like 70s or 80s, and they were doing research into there's a percentage of people that you could send them through military training, send them into the middle of war, give them a gun and have them pointed at their enemy, and there are people that can't pull the trigger. There were people that were finding muskets all the way back from like from the Civil War. They were finding muskets years after the battle, and because you had to load one bullet at a time, and they were finding guns that had multiple bullets loaded in the gun. And they found this on more than one occasion, with the idea that they were going through the motions. They were marching, they were pointing their gun at the enemy, and they still couldn't pull the trigger. And that's just so bizarre, because it's like your life is literally on the line and they still couldn't do it. And I think that's again the humanity that comes out of a lot of anti-war movies. And I feel like Paths of Glory is, if not the film that did it, one of the films that opened up the can of this conversation. I'm sure there were probably, this was based off of a book, but I think in terms of film, I think it was kind of one of the first ones to come out and have a bold statement like this, which is pretty impressive, again, for its time.
Yeah, I mean, think about 1957. So it was only, only a decade after the end of World War II, and it was kind of at the height of the Cold War, and it was also the French were still, colonial France still had, they were fighting a civil war in what became Vietnam. They were also fighting in Algeria. I mean, that time was kind of the collapse of colonial Europe, and and it's, and it has this powerful message. It's one thing when you were talking about, not being able to pull the trigger. It makes you think. It's like, in every culture, the idea of murder is wrong, and it's morally wrong, and yet, there's and yet we every culture has fought wars too.
Yeah, you find ways to justify it, and that's the duty to country versus, again, duty to self, because it's like, do you want to murder people? And that's just an honest question, and it's a very hard question to answer.
There was a great it was very interesting in World War II. One of the Nazi at the Nuremberg trials, it came out that one of the Nazi officials, generals, he had been quoted. There was on a newsreel, and it showed him, and it said, "The only good Jew is a dead Jew."
Mm-hmm.
And this was like part of the Nazi propaganda, and it was shown, on newsreels throughout Germany, and and it came out at and this was used as evidence against him for crimes against humanity at Nuremberg. And one of the interesting things that came out of World War II is, after the war ended and General MacArthur of the United States, he was put in charge of kind of the military occupation of Japan.
Okay.
And there's a newsreel that shows an interview with General MacArthur, and he says the only good Jap is a dead Jap.
Okay.
So you've got, on one side, you've got a German general saying,
Yep,
that's being, that is being tried for crimes against humanity, saying the only, good Jew is a dead Jew, and an American general who won the war and wasn't punished at all for saying the only good Jap is a dead Jap.
Yep. It's
What's the difference?
Yep.
What's the difference?
It's a very bizarre exchange. Yes.
Other than one side won a war and the other didn't, and I think, it's reprehensible turning, part of the act of war is, because I think it's so hard to kill your fellow man, part of it is making the enemy inhuman.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of, like, the levers of power and the levers of governments and armies to get people to fight successfully in war, is you have to make the enemy inhumane.
Oh, 1,000,000%. Yeah.
I think that's what makes the end of Path of Glory so fascinating, is that, these soldiers have been taught that Germans, they eat babies, and that they do, that they're horrible, that they're inhumane, and, and yet here's this German woman singing the song and sharing her humanity with the French soldiers, and the French soldiers sharing their humanity by humming along and crying. And I think that's the message from Kubrick, is that sense of humanity is stronger than the acts of war.
Yeah. And it's also then, I think, demonstrated too, to continue that point. It's continued then also even in the soldiers on trial. Like we were saying, they're wearing their same goddamn uniform that they were wearing in the trenches. It's the exact same outfit. And so here are these 3 exhausted, tired, miserable soldiers that are in, again, like we were saying, this palace, and it's beautiful, and it's everything is sparkly and shiny and bright, and then here are these soldiers that, like, you like, I'm sure they smell bad, they're tired, they're exhausted, like you said, they need a shower and they haven't gotten one, and it's a way to separate it. Because again, it's easier to sentence somebody to death when they look the part of being gross and look like your cliche criminal. People always say things like, "Well, that I'm surprised that person is a killer. He or she doesn't look like a killer." And it's like, what does a killer look like? And
Yeah.
and I feel like that film does this as well. And there's also amazing contrast shots again where the soldiers are in the trench. They're dying. They're watching their friends next to them die for this valley of death. And then Kirk Douglas goes to a party where all the people that are calling these shots are dancing, with women, and they're having a party and they're drinking and they're celebrating. And it's just like that. It's just it's nuts. It's a very interesting stark contrast where, again, there are people in this world where it's like, war is an economy and soldiers are a number, and
and I mean and I can't stress enough. It's like 4 innocent soldiers that are put to death because they survived a battle that 55% of their comrades didn't. That's why they're put to death. Yet the general who calls the court-martial fires on his own troops, has the artillery fire on his own troops to motivate them to go fight. I mean, that's insane. That's absolutely insane.
And my favorite thing too is that that's the inciting incident. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's not the climax of the story. That's what starts the story. Is this fucking crazy general with the scar on his face saying, "Fire mortar, not mortar." I'm not a big gun person. I don't know a lot of these terms, but fire giant, effectively bombs on our own people to scare them out of the trenches to go fight. It's just like, what? Like, it's nuts. It's crazy, and it makes for very, very good storytelling.
It's just as relevant today as it was when it came out.
Yep. You demoralize the enemy, and again, if you just paint them as just absolutely the worst, terrible people in the world, it justifies war. And I think there are people in this world that they won't swallow that pill. Obviously, there are people that want what is best for their country, but war is a very, very weird, bizarre, gray area. And then again, that's another great thing. Again, when Kubrick shows that valley, it's fucking gray. There is not really black and white. It is painted as gray as humanly possible. Obviously, there's nighttime shots where it is then painted heavily black, but during the day where you see it the most, the landscape, everything is gray. And it's a very great movie of, again, what would you do in this situation? And putting yourself in the shoes of others, I always think, is a very important thing in life, because people are different than you. And he does a great job. That we were talking about that marching scene where there's the drum, they're walking up to the firing line, and he keeps holding it. And I think it's this scene where it's just little by little, you start to feel, you get that feeling that they probably have. Obviously, it's a fictional story, obviously, and it's a movie, it's characters, but what it's supposed to portray of, like, how would you feel walking down a line and there's a post and you're going to die at that post? Like, it's just, he does a really good job.
Everyone is there to watch you die.
Yeah, and but they're on your side. They're the same countrymen as you. Yeah, and it's just like it
shows the insanity of the war. Yeah.
Who's here for what and why, and again, it like we said a lot in the last episode. This is the end of the 50s, and I feel like this movie very much today holds up in terms of the message of what it's trying to say, and to let you leave with a thought and idea. It does a great job, very much like Touch of Evil as well, where you get to interpret a lot of parts and take away your own feelings.
Yeah. It's one last thought on that last scene. It's the movie ends with a song, and by these French soldiers. And there's another classic, great Hollywood classic film, um, Casablanca. Casablanca, it takes place in World War II, but that movie ends with this rousing rendition of the French national anthem, which is supposed to rouse you to, support, support the French and support the resistance and, the war effort and all that, and make you proud to be a Frenchman and all that. And, Kubrick kind of uses the same cinematic element. He ends his movie with a song, and yet the takeaway couldn't be, more it's 180 degrees opposite.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a great film. Past the Glory, Stanley Kubrick, 1957. Unless there's anything else that we're missing, I think that does a good job at summarizing all of this and our thoughts and feelings on it. Yeah. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. And
thank you for letting me film nerd talk for like the last 2 hours.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and hopefully everyone at home listening enjoyed it as well. It's for me, it's about the people that I bring on, and this, I've been excited for this one for quite a while. So thank you so much, and thank you for everybody listening at home, and we will see you all next time. This has been the You Show. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, You Show.
Thank you, you.
Bye-bye.
Hello there, soldier. Ready to kill more Germans?
Yes, sir.
What's your name, soldier?
Sir, Private Parole Company A.
Uh-huh. You married, Private?
No, sir.
Well, I'll bet your mother's proud of you.
Yes, sir.
Well, carry on, Private, and good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Hello there, soldier. Ready to kill more Germans?
Yes, sir.
Ha Working over your rifle, I see. Well, that's the way. It's a soldier's best friend. You be good to it, and it'll always be good to you.
Yes, sir.
Well, good luck to you, soldier. Carry on.
Thank you, sir.